Good morning and welcome to The Point. It is Thursday, November 12th, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20, and good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9. This morning we have a popular figure that most of you should know, attorney at law Anslem Clouden, and we are discussing things of national interest. Good morning, Mr. Clouden.
Good morning, my dear.
And how are you?
Oh, not too bad, but the better for seeing you.
Oh, thank you. Just move a little bit to your left a little bit. Right.
Good.
There, that's better. Yes.
Good.
So let's get into it, Mr. Clouden. You have been one of the people who have been vocal on a number of issues. And we're going to start a little closer to maybe one of the most recent happenings in relation to COVID-19. And you're one of the people that have called for the closing of our borders. Tell me why you believe this is the time that we should close back our borders as we continue to battle this deadly virus.
Very well. Now, the world over, the virus is on fire in every continent, in Europe, in the United States of America, in Canada. This is the worst period for the spread of the virus, when the temperature has fallen in the cool temperate climates. So that, as we speak, you have 65,000 Americans hospitalized as a result of COVID. In a good many states, there are shortages of beds. As a matter of fact, in Texas, today, they have refrigerated containers to store dead bodies. Over 10 million people are infected in the United States alone. Over 250,000 have since died. Now, the pandemic is raging. Why are we going to allow flags coming from the United States into Grenada? Having regard to the fact that there is no 100% proof of either the rapid test, where you get a rapid result, or the CPR test, where in fact they have had, in some instances, to test and retest because of the inaccuracy of the result. So that I think it prudent. England has locked down, the British government has locked down the United Kingdom for 1 month. As a matter of fact, because of the spread in recent times, Denmark has experienced a rather strange phenomenon in that the mink, the animal from which mink coats are made, they have found that the virus is now transmitted from animals to humans, and from humans back to animals. It was for this reason that the British government a few days ago wants to replicate itself to the extent that even as we speak, there is no certainty that the vaccine that's being developed, because of its inherent potency when frozen to well over 70 degrees centigrade, way under zero. That's the only way it could be effective if stored at such high temperatures. When I say high in the context of being frozen cold. So that we look at what is happening in Trinidad. It's spiking there. Jamaica, spiking there. St. Lucia, spiking there. We must take the prudent course, therefore, then, and cease all travel into Grenada from these countries where there is persistent spiking of the virus. But we cannot monitor, and we lack the capacity for national testing, national isolation, and also quarantine. Well, that is a disaster, because where you have individuals going to the residence of quarantine, that is a recipe for spread. because they're not confined. And they're not confined under the coercive powers of the state. So they're likely to wander. And if we should encounter a community spread here in St. George's or Grenville or where have you, it would spell disaster for our health facility. We lack capacity there. We do not have sufficient ventilators. You would have Grenadians dying like flies. So that we must take the prudent course, lockdown for a month, and let's see what is going to happen in North America, in Canada, in Europe. Spain is locked down. France is locked down. Germany is locked down. England locked down. The Netherlands locking down. Why are we opening our borders then to flights coming from these countries? So that I am saying to the Prime Minister and those who are responsible for making the day-to-day decisions as it affects the health of the nation, that they must be warned and be prudent in the exercise of their discretion, whether to lock down or not to lock down. And I would urge them to close our borders now in light of the international spiking of the virus so that we can operate from within in a protective environment, business as usual. We observe, wearing our face masks, the cleanliness of our hands, and the social distancing, and we'll be pretty safe.
How the government has said that it is not in the best interest of the country to lock down. The countries that are locking down, the Netherlands, the Germany, that like you've highlighted, they could more or less sustain themselves. Grenada is not in that position. And the borders are open to ensure that the economy can get going again and Grenada can start to get back as close to normal as possible. Do you think, Grenada, if we lock down, if we would still be able to bounce back, get back to normal, get the economy going?
Of course we can. If we control the virus, then we get the economy going. If there is a spike, why take the chance? If we control the virus, we abate the propensity to spread, then the economy will pick up. But if we don't control the virus and it spreads, then forget about the economy. We have to put the emphasis on life, on health, and not on livelihood. We are sufficiently small a population that we could sustain ourselves. It is these parasitic oligarchies, the parasitic oligarchies that think everything is money. One's health is more important than one's wealth. Because if you don't have health, then you cannot acquire wealth. And if we continue like this, and there is, God forbid, there is a spread in this country, then you will see that economies are going to be closed down. People are not going to go shopping. People are going to be more protective of themselves rather than protective of their livelihood. So I think if you control the pandemic, thank God we haven't escalated as Trinidad, our closest neighbor, or as St. Lucia, or as Guyana. And this is why it is important that we cease regional travel too. Forget about this nonsense bubble. Doesn't make any sense. Stop travel into the country, because this is how we become infected. It is always somebody coming in with this virus. So stop it and let the GDP generate from within. And we would live. We are agricultural-based economy. But you see, they have neglected agriculture for so long, have put tremendous emphasis in tourism, and these white elephants are going to be there with us for a while. Because if this vaccine doesn't work, and you would have to take it, and already they're saying that it's not designed for middle income and poor countries. So we already get left out up front. So that we have to now learn to be self-reliant, to be resilient, and to show solidarity from within. And forget about this regional bubble and all this nonsense. What is happening in Trinidad? Could we contribute or assist in any way? If we get a spike here and things get out of hand, where are we going to get ventilators? Where are we going to find isolation facility? And this is another thing. That brings me to another point. That we need to have isolation units where this thing is going to spread. It's going to spread. It's going to get worse. As we speak now, you have shortages of hospital beds. You have shortages of morgues. They have to make makeshift, containerized morgues to take dead bodies. We are not looking around the world and see what is happening all around us. And if we are cognizant of what is happening and the propensity of this virus to spread and to kill, we are going to take the prudent and cautious step of closing our borders to international travel until the virus is brought under control. And that's what I have to say.
You're saying health before wealth, but there are people who may be thinking differently, because with the border shut, there are people who would see a reduction and loss in income. Can you give them any advice as to this is the way to go and why they shouldn't be thinking about an income at this time, maybe?
Yes, because you see, we are sufficiently economically buoyant in the context of being able to produce most of the essential foods that we need to sustain us healthily. We can do that. Now, we take it incrementally. So you lock down for 1 month. So prior to the lockdown, just as they have done in England have done it. You give warning, you stockpile, you say, well, look, from the 5th of November, I'm just going hypothetical, or from the 5th of December, we have a 4-week lockdown. That gives the business community sufficient time to stockpile on essentials, for example, medicines and the like, so that for that month, we monitor the global situation and we determine whether we would extend it or ease back on it, as has been done in other countries. England had locked down once. Even the Prime Minister had contracted the virus and was touch and go, 50-50. He could have died. The point I'm making is they then opened up a bit. They did it in France. They did it in Spain. It was done in Italy. Remember, the virus was raging 6 months ago. We ourselves had locked down when we hadn't as many instances of the virus among us, and we locked down. And we survived, didn't we? And there was no untold hardship, as the case may be, but it's these parasitic oligarchs who see nothing but money, and they don't give a damn about the health of the nation. The poor man in Marrakesh, they don't care about him. They don't care about the poor. You know, my grandmother used to say prevention is better than cure. And we are obliged, a government is there to protect the health of those without wealth, not to protect the wealthy. It is to protect the health of those without wealth. And this is the majority of Canadians. And we need that type of protection from the government.
All right, let's move on to, because I know some of the calls may go back to COVID-19. We have a lot to talk about this morning. Another area of interest of yours has to do with the decriminalization and possibly legalization of marijuana. Recently,
yes,
we've seen the NDC coming out saying that they want government to adopt a regional report. The Keith Mitchell-led administration has said Dr. Mitchell is rethinking his position about the decriminalization. What are your thoughts about where the conversation about that is going?
Well, the conversation about that is, you know, there's a phrase in Latin, and I'm a student of Latin, de minimis non curat lex. The law does not concern itself with trivial things. The minimus non curate lex. Look, man, we are not talking about decriminalizing marijuana so that Tom, Dick, or Harry can have 5 joints and you can't arrest him. You give him a ticket, or he can plant 5 trees in his backyard to make his tea in the morning, as the case may be. That's not what we want. We've gone past that. The Prime Minister knows that himself. This is why he's been saying to the police, well, look, if you find a man with 1 marijuana cigarette, you have more things to do, forget about him. If he has an ounce of weed, forget about him. But he hasn't amended the law. You see, this whole thing is confused and it's bordering on all kinds of Buck Rogers thinking, as the case may be. Look, you can't tell the police to neglect to arrest a man if he has 1 marijuana cigarette, when in fact the penalty for that possession is a fine of $250,000 or 5 years in jail. And the trafficking quantity, you can't tell the police, well, look, a fellow would have an ounce of marijuana and don't worry about him, find yourself doing other things. But the law says if he's in possession of an ounce of marijuana, he's trafficking. And trafficking carries a very severe penalty. And as such, what is necessary now is a sort of hiatus, a reprieve, so that if the Prime Minister is well-meaning when he speaks of decriminalizing marijuana, and we're talking about legalizing marijuana for medicinal purposes, for export, creating an industry from the production and cultivation of cannabis, both for its medicinal advantages and for as an export crop. I'll get to that later, but let me say what is needed here and now to avoid confusion, because we are all subject to the rule of law and due process of law. And therefore, in order that the police can turn a blind eye to those found with simple possession or minor cultivation, the law must be amended. So the Prime Minister must put his Attorney General to work to draft an appropriate amendment to the Drug Prevention and Control Act to suspend the draconian provisions with respect to penalties and to allow, for the time being, until a proper bill is forwarded for cultivation. You can limit how much. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent just won on the ticket. He said he wanted 50 trees per household. So that you have to amend the law as it's presently constituted to provide for more lenient penalties for greater quantities. Because as it now stands, those provisions are draconian and visited with discretionary long-term imprisonment, because the berth is so wide. You can be fined $250,000 or 5 years in prison for simple possession. And that tells you how insensitive our people were. A lot of innocent men have been sent to prison. Their careers have been ruined as a result of the neglect by our leaders to, as it were, accommodate the global move and understanding of psychotropic substances. This is why Canada has legalized, and that's where we have to go. Legalize cannabis so that you cultivate a certain strain for medicine. You cultivate a certain strain for recreation and a certain strain for other byproducts of the plant itself, as making sales and a multiplicity of things that could be done. But it has to be properly managed, and government would derive good revenue. In 1 week in Colorado, when cannabis was legalized there, they netted over $1 billion in revenue. Similar in California. So what has to be done is this conversation must encapsulate the legalizing or decriminalizing of marijuana for the nation's benefit. It's not for the benefit of Tom, Dick, or Harry. Just as we export bananas, we must see ourselves as a main exporter of cannabis for medicine, cannabis for recreation. And we go global with that. That is going to put money in the hands of ordinary Grenadians. So there wouldn't be beggars. There wouldn't always be a handout. And I guess the politicians are afraid of that too, because they would no longer be dependent on them. They would be independent. They would have their families. They would be able to take care of their families with dignity, with peace, dignity, freedom, and equality. That's what we are looking for. We are looking for a discussion to decriminalize 5 joints and you have an ounce and you can't. No. We have to look at this as an investment. And we're going to put Grenada on the map as one of the countries that grow the best medicinal weed in the world. And you would see how this economy would go leaps and bounds. Forget about oil. Everybody's thinking about renewable energy. And all this oil talk, I was part of the delegation that did the delimitation of our maritime boundary as a maritime lawyer. So I know where the oil is, I know where the natural gas is. And I can tell these people, the Grenadian public, do not depend on oil and natural gas. The time that you come around to that, the Soviets or the Chinese would have it. And you would get very little royalties from it. Grow your own stuff here and export it and see the nice houses and your children go to good schools and your wives walk with dignity, well dressed in their frocks and their daughters. And that brings me now to another point I want to make. And that is the convention with respect to the right of the child. And I really want us to get into that.
Okay, what about the convention specifically?
Well, you see, Grenada is a signatory to this convention. They became a signatory on the 21st of February, 1990. It's the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the obligation of contracting states to protect, as it were, the psychological, educational, development of the child and to act in a manner that is consistent with what is in the best interest of the child for its economic development. Now, I witnessed the most callous form of brainwashing to ever take place in a democratic society. Now, if this had taken place in North Korea or some other such country, I could have understood it. But where this Minister Lewis would put face masks on children dressed in party uniform and have her picture on the mask itself, that is in contravention of Article 16 of the Convention on the Right of the Child.
Mr. Clouden, sorry, before you get into the convention, we'll definitely get into it on the next side of the break. Just let me take this quick break and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion.
Most certainly.
This is To The Point on Classic and GBN. We'll be right back.
From Monday, November 2nd to Thursday, December 31st, GBN's Christmas Caravan will be blazing the trail of goodness across Grenada. Join us as we journey daily to find the hottest deals this Christmas season. Win prizes from our partners. Get recipes for your favorite Christmas treats and bust a tune in the Christmas Karaoke Fun segment. It's GBN's Christmas Caravan. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Live on Classic Radio 105.5 and 105.9. GBN Television. Channels 7 and 11, GBN's Facebook page, and GBN's YouTube channel. Your mid-mornings will never be the same.
The Christmas Caravan is brought to you in part by Hubbard's and the Food Fair Supermarkets, Kittens Healthcare, Sisson's Paint, and Bryden and Miners and Ace Hardware.
Breaking barriers, going beyond the ordinary, examining the stories beyond what meets the eyes. GBN gets to the meat of the matter. Join us on GBN Television, Classic Radio, gbn.gd, or on Facebook via your smartphones and other devices. We take you beyond the headlines every Monday night at 8:30 p.m. We are GBN, rated #1.
GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us #1. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11, K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gbn.gd. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Feel good tax.
Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
Tony off. There goes again. He took me to a higher level, higher. Oh, Daddy Father blessing me. Oh, Daddy Father.
The world is brighter. I'm so much lighter since you came into my life, Lord. I am not the same.
Blessings flowing over here like a fountain. Don't make nobody trick you, no. Hands up.
Welcome back to the Point, speaking with attorney at law Anslem Clouden, matters of national interest. Mr. Clouden, before we took the break, we were speaking about the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and it's in relation to something that sparked a lot of discussion a few weeks ago with some children being given a mask to wear in school. So continue, you were about to highlight the part of the convention.
That conduct is inconsistent with Article 16 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I'll read to you the substance of the article. It says, no child shall be subjected to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his or her privacy, family home, or correspondence, nor to unlawful attacks on his or her honor and reputation. That's Article 16. Now, Article 36 is more explicit. Article 36 speaks to the exploitation of the child and the right and duty of the contracting state, such as Grenada is, to, as it were, protect the child. And this is the substance of Article 36. States parties shall protect the child against all forms of exploitation prejudicial to any aspect of the child's welfare. Now, the demonstration we saw with these children with the mask of the politician's picture on it, that is a form of psychological brainwashing, because it is clothed in the party, the political operatives party, and her being the Minister of Youth doesn't speak well for the decency and of that conduct, the inappropriateness of the conduct, so to speak.
At this point in the program, the phones have been ringing, the comments and questions have been coming in, so let's take in those questions as we continue the conversation. 435-2041, that's the number to call and ask your questions of Mr. Clouden, respectfully so. You can also message us on the WhatsApp. It's also 435-2041, as well as Facebook and YouTube. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, citizen. Well, I want to ascertain that Brother Clouden is hearing me. Is he? Can you verify that?
Mr. Clouden, can you hear Citizen Rollo?
Yep.
Can you hear Citizen Rollo?
Well, I didn't hear him clearly.
Okay.
There we go. Check again.
Could he repeat the question, please?
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, very well. Anyway, let's go. Listen, I must indeed say that I feel so good when I hear, you know, I mean, we sat at school together, and he was destined to be a lawyer. Very important facts. I want to tell you, I concur with you on the issue related to the COVID regulations and so on, and the biosanitary measures that were put into place, and whatnot and whatnot. I also concur with you on the issue related to the children or the child, and related to the conventional rights of the child. I have a little differences on the marijuana, the cannabis issue, which we'll talk about afterwards. But Citizen Clouden, there is something that's happened in this here country related to United Nations Convention. That's on the conventional rights of persons with disabilities. In this here country, people with disabilities are treated like scum. The government of Grenada and the powers that be shut down the throat, and I'm not ashamed to down the throat of the people with disabilities, abusing them. People with disabilities die in the houses in this here country for lack of medical attention or otherwise. I can't go on to the whole list. What's your view on that, sir? And the other thing is, it as related to the Constitution or so-called Constitution of this here country, you as a lawyer defend it. Can you tell the people of this country how, when, and where the Constitution of Grenada gained its validity, legitimacy, and legal authority? Is there something that I do not know? Can you tell us how, when, and where the Constitution Act of Grenada was enacted into the Parliament, and the Independent Act, so we can start talking about this in a bid to correct the future of this here country. I hope you got the message generally. Thank you very much, and do have a nice day.
Thank you, Citizen Rollo.
The message, citizen. I think more ought to be done with respect to recognizing the need to facilitate those who suffer from some disability, whatever that disability is. For example, we should by now provide access to buildings for those who are on wheelchairs and they need to get around. I don't think the government is conscious of the needs and the responsibilities they have with respect to the disabled. And this is well documented in the UN Convention. on the rights of disabled persons. So I do concur with you in that enough has not been done. And there have not been sufficient recognition and appropriate action taken to alleviate or abate the suffering of those who are disabled and suffer from some disability.
There is a question on the WhatsApp. Well, more of statement. I don't think a lockdown is necessary. We may need to close traffic from the hotspot countries and allow the local economy to operate. So what about adjusting the lockdown instead and just maybe allow arrivals from the countries with less cases compared to the countries that are the hotspots like the US and the UK?
Well, you see, in the first instance, you need a total lockdown, and then you begin to evaluate the different countries or areas that you can ease the lockdown on. But as it stands now, you have to take a definitive step to lock down, and then you begin to evaluate. This is what London has done. This is what the UK has done. This is what France has done. And as things ease, then you adjust to suit. But you cannot tell, for that matter, a country may not be a hotspot, but nevertheless, you do have persons entering that country in transit or for whatever period, and then travel to Grenada. Now, if we entertain such persons, having regard to the lack of proper quarantine facility, isolation facility, testing facility, we are putting ourselves at peril. So that I would initially advocate for a complete lockdown and a gradual easing depending on global circumstances.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. Mr. Clouden. Good morning. Mr. Clouden, nearly all what you have said, to me, is right. But I'll ask you a few questions, and I want you to answer them. Now, recently, I heard a lawyer talking about gazette, government gazette, and this and that. I know you are talking about different things, sorry. Are you all united? In other words, what I'm trying to say, maybe if you all were united, what you say now might have been put to force, put to fruition. For the simple reason you all would have had the ability to approach government in unity and put forward those things that you are saying, or some of them, and then it would be more effective. In fact, at one time, I said that the laws seem to have weak sense in connect, because the government, they making laws and they cannot put the laws, not the laws personally, the legal-minded people that working for the government, and these laws cannot be put into force, because that is why people doing what they want. It's time that the lawyers get together and confront, I don't mean to fight, the government, and tell them or advise them what is best for us. I know you talked about locking down. Yes, it's a good thing to lock down, but we have to make sure we have enough food and this and that, shelter and medicine. Now, these are the things we have to put into being. Food is very important.
Okay.
So as you said, we have to do a lot of farming. Government have to buy places, agricultural areas, or take some of your lands.
Okay, thank you, caller. Mr. Clouden?
Yes, ma'am.
Any response to what the caller said?
Well, no, not really. I think he has expressed his own sentiments. I think he agrees with the lockdown. I mean, we have to act prudently, and I think most people would accept, having regard to the international spiking that's taking place with this virus, we have to protect ourselves, and the most efficacious way to do so now is by locking our borders down.
Another WhatsApp question. Somebody's agreeing that it's a case of child abuse. Do you think the minister was intentionally contaminating the minds of innocent children?
Well, the devil know not what man's intention is. I mean, she must have had some ulterior motive to put a picture on the mast. I mean, there must have been some measure of forethought before she ascribed her picture to the mast. I cannot fathom her intention, but I know there ought to be, based on her conduct, the only reasonable inference that one can draw is that it was intended to brainwash, psychologically castrate these children into thinking that NMP is the only party and that the minister is their minister, and there are some consequences she anticipates in the future. Maybe their parents would vote for her, or they may vote for her. All this sort of political gerrymandering and geriatrics, that is indecent in a democratic society such as we have. You ought not to exploit at an educational institution the minds of the innocent children, to shape it or condition it to think in a particular political forum.
Let me go back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom, and good morning to your guests. I did address this issue before concerning the mask. Not only is the mask, I think the woman meant well, but I think she was ignorant of what the consequences might be. What I want to say is, I said that the last time and I would emphasize it, because a lot of us who are living, we don't really give any credit to God and to what he stands for and what he said. Now, the Bible tells you that. He said, blessed is the womb that never bear in the last days. It means that people don't have children. They would be blessed. So it means what will be befalling children in the last days, it would not be something desirable, but it will be enforced, and it has to happen. So this is only the beginning of what the Bible says will happen. That's only the beginning. I said that already. We have to recognize the times we are living in. We are living in biblically prophetic fulfilling times. And it is going fast and furious. And the people who are doing it don't even aware. Some of them don't even read the Bible. They don't believe in God. They don't believe the Bible. But they are fulfilling it so fast and so accurate. What people need to do, it matter what happens, is going to happen. So we have to get ready to meet God. That is the key. And I'm going to emphasize that to Grenada. And, well, who believe, believe. Who don't believe, the Bible says, he that is filthy, let him be filthy still. He that is holy, let him be holy still.
Thank you very much. Any responses, Mr. Clouden?
No, I think she's on a religious expedition. And what she says is truth. I mean, you know, there was a part of Genesis that said that the Lord has put all trees here, or all things he has made as good nourishment for the body. So I agree with her. You know.
I'm trying to recall, I don't recall if you answered Citizen Rollo's question, read the Constitution and its validity. Did you?
Well, I hadn't gone into it because the Constitution, in a sense, provides for the security of person, which would fall into the context of the disabled. So the Constitution does speak to what Citizen Roll was saying.
Okay. Somebody is inquiring, it's outside of the scope of what we spoke about, but somebody on the WhatsApp wants to know if you were sexually abused as a child, can you take that perpetrator to court now that you are an adult? Is there a statute of limitation on when you can bring sexual charges also to someone, on someone?
Yeah, the limitations in certain statutes. With respect to our laws here, I cannot speak to it off the top of my head when given public advice, but I should think that if that complaint is made immediately upon attaining the age of majority, then of course it could be entertained. Because when someone is a minor, they lack certain capacity. They're moved by guardians ad litem and guardians generally until they reaches the age of majority. So I would think upon reaching that age, an allegation could be made and it could be acted upon.
Have you sought an audience with the Prime Minister or maybe the officials from the Ministry of Health to share some of your concerns? One of the comments on WhatsApp is that the person does not believe the Prime Minister would listen to you. Is that something that you've made attempts to do?
I guess the Grenadian public know that the Prime Minister wouldn't listen to me. I know that. And that's his right, you know.
What about the
Prime Minister? He should be the Prime Minister for all the citizens, for all Grenadians, those who voted for him and those who didn't vote for him. But this is not the way we operate in these banana republics. They draw definitive lines. It's very tribal. The politics here is tribal. This is why it was so unfortunate that a teacher would be seen wearing a mask depicting the minister's face. Everything is so tribal. We don't look at it holistically and look at what is in the best interest of the nation. It is Grenada and not Citizen Clouden or Citizen Kane. Grenada's interests should be paramount.
What about trying to speak with officials of the Ministry of Health then?
Well, I speak with, yes, Minister Steele is quite gregarious, and I think I could speak with him. I speak with him socially anyhow, you know. Or for that matter, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Agriculture. I do have friends in the NMP party, and those of our good friends who have crossed the Rubicon and burned their boots are now NMPites. So they're still my friends, and we speak, you know. I am not that tribal. I look at what is in the best interest of the country. And this is why I've taken this public persona. It's always what is in the best interest of the people of the country. And that should be paramount.
Good morning, caller.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. My girl Blossom and Mr. Clouden, my boy. Now, I just want to make a few points. First of all, the point that was raised by Brother Rollo, it's not limited to the whole idea of the constitutionality, protecting the rights of people with disability. But he was asking Mr. Clouden, in fact, what he knows about the present status of our so-called, as he said, constitution. Has it been passed in our parliament? If he's aware of any order to make it legitimate. So that is the concern I think he had shared. And this has been his mantra going onward. And we have been asking the legal minds, such as Mr. Clouden, to give an opinion on that. Secondly, as usual, Mr. Clouden, you are very vocal and advocating, and I congratulate you on many grounds. But I also like to put in a number of, for now, a few constitutional matters, and ask him if he can do some research and assist the Legal Bar Association and assist the general public in promoting. Particularly, I'd like to speak about the election. Our Representation of the People's Act, Section 6.1 in particular, or the entire section, Section 6, speaks about having qualification to register and to vote, and by extension to take part in the government of Grenada. It says that a citizen of Grenada and also a Commonwealth citizen. But I am saying that there's some form of inconsistency there with the Constitution, because the Constitution in Section 32 speaks specifically to a Commonwealth citizen. And it is wrong to separate or to include, in my opinion, and I stand corrected based on your legal minds, to have a citizen of Grenada. When you put a citizen of Grenada, you expose Grenada to all Tom, Dick, and Harry from any part of the world to come in our country to vote. The second issue is based on the registration of persons to vote and the reissuance of the so-called expired ID card. Some people are complaining, even last night, the example was made public, that in spite of what the electoral office is saying, that by 1 week or maximum 2 weeks, and we can give them 1 month, persons who apply will get the cards. This is not the case. The people must rise up and demand. In fact, the law must be more explicit that persons are registered and taking a length of time before they get a card.
Okay.
And the sad thing about it, when time for election, all sorts of excuses, feeble excuse, and the election office is not encouraging persons to work with a card. And so it's opened the window for speculation of fraudulent election. Please give your opinion.
Thank you very much, caller. Mr. Clouden?
Yes, well, I think the caller made certain pronouncements with respect to the representation of the People's Act. That is what really covers the conduct of elections and registration and the like. I am not too familiar with that aspect of the law, to be quite honest. I would have to look it up and to be in a position to render an opinion on it.
There was a WhatsApp question. Somebody on WhatsApp is saying, hold on, let me see. There we go. We heard the PM saying, well, the same comment you made earlier, that it is a waste of time going behind somebody with a small joint. Because of the shooting of the young man, now we learn that he was charged for that same joint. The question is, if you were the lawyer for that young man, based on the Prime Minister's statement, what would be your defense for him?
Well, this is it. If he was found in possession of it, there could be no defense in law. This is why I have advocated amending the law until there's a substantive bill passed or a law that would replace the Prevention and Control Act, Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act. Then you have to do certain repeals of certain sections. The section on possession has not been repealed, so that he has no defense. Possession, if he has knowledge, custody, and control of the thing, the Prime Minister is not above the law. We live under the rule of law, and all man is subject to the law. And this is why I found it quite inappropriate that the Prime Minister should have alluded to that manner of exculpating someone who is found in possession, when in fact the law says and prescribes a penalty that he must suffer if he is in possession of that quantity of the substance. It's the same thing with Dorset Charles. The government has a judgment for so many years, almost 20 years. Dorset is severely ill. He needs to travel. He's a Canadian, and we are working with the Canadian government now to see what could be done. But the Prime Minister said he doesn't agree with the judgment. Well, the independence of the judiciary, the legislature, the executive and the judiciary are supposed to be theoretically co-equal arms of government. Each maintains a certain independence from the other, but they function collectively for good governance. The rule of law, the Bill of Rights, Magna Carta, these bulwark cathedral of freedoms throughout the English-speaking world was so designed that no man is above the law. And when you try to put yourself above the law, you enter the realm of dictatorship and totalitarianism. So that if you feel a certain way as a Prime Minister, that it is unjust to apprehend someone with 1 marijuana cigarette, 5 marijuana cigarettes, with 1 ounce of marijuana, then amend the law to reflect your disposition, where in fact you know that 2/3 of the country engage in some form of smoking of marijuana. And therefore, it is unjust and unfair that young people who smoke for medicinal purposes, recreational purposes, as the case may be, should be penalized and saddled with a criminal record, literally damaging the entire social and economic development as a consequence of simple possession. In some countries, as St. Vincent, countries like my country, Canada, it's all legal. We can export to Canada. So that if you want to move in that direction of decriminalizing, then amend the law. In the meantime, until such time as you have completed all the discussions and all the scientific data at your disposal, and you have made a decision ultimately to legalize cannabis for medicine and for recreation. In the meantime, ease the burden on the population, amend the laws, put certain aspects of the law on suspension, on hold, until such time as you can come up with a comprehensive bill.
Mr. Clouden, I'd like to thank you so much for being our guest this morning. We've come to the end of the program that our flew past. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on these issues. Appreciate it. Continue to stay safe.
Thank you, and you likewise. And I'm sorry for I'm not accustomed, as it were, yet to using either of the devices.
No problem. Don't worry about it at all.
I'll be glad it next time. And do tell Ms. Campbell how pleased I was with her temporary corrective measures.
No problem.
I will follow it in the future.
No problem. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. Attorney at law Anslem Clouden, our guest this morning. We thank him once again for sharing his thoughts on these issues. And thank you, our viewers and listeners, for tuning into the program this morning. Always appreciate your time, your listenership, and your viewership. Joseph and Janelle is up next with the Christmas Caravan. Have yourselves a safe, productive, thankful Thursday.